We're going to try again. Somehow or other, we have a weak connection. So, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So, I'm going to continue reading. I'll continue reading. If there's not sufficient attraction or repulsion, you will not even come to the first stage, yes. Thoughts about it will not linger in your mind because there's a little interest in what you contemplate. So even though you recognize something is very beautiful, it doesn't necessarily attract you. So attraction, dayato vishayam, meditating or attraction to contemplating the object of the senses, doesn't necessarily mean just because it's attractive, you'll contemplate it. A lot of attractive things we don't contemplate because we don't perceive necessarily that we can enjoy it, or we don't want to enjoy it, or we know it's not good for us. There's a lot of food that's attractive that I don't eat. I'm not attracted to it because I know it's not healthy. So where we get caught in the contemplative process is that we have either had past experience that something is attractive, or we perceive it's going to be attractive. We sense it's going to be attractive. And one of the great weapons that we were just having class this evening, and devotee was asking how we know, or how does Maya work on us? How does she cover us or throw us into illusion? And one of the ways she does that is she creates a scenario or illusory scenario within our minds, or paints a picture that something is going to be attractive. If that painting is not there, that illusion is not there, why would we do it? We have to perceive some pleasure in it. And unless it's something that just is necessary or something that's healthy. But in terms of contemplating enjoyment, Maya is often expert at creating illusion that something is going to be a certain way, and it'll never be that way. And spiritual knowledge, we say, pops the bubble or pops the illusion. Spiritual knowledge explains how it actually is, so that we won't be illusioned to think something is going to be the way it can never be. And we're all hopeful of material enjoyment, so a lot of times we'll perceive, or we'll look at something and perceive that it will bring us happiness when it can't possibly bring us happiness, or it may actually only bring us misery. But we want to enjoy so much that sometimes we're willing to allow ourselves to be illusioned into thinking this will give us happiness. So then, if that's the case, then as we contemplate something that we think will give us pleasure, and we contemplate how it will give us pleasure, then we'll go to the next stage. We'll become attached to that, to doing it or enjoying it, because we've already convinced ourselves that it's going to give us pleasure. This is how advertising works. It just paints an illusory picture, or many kinds of advertising works this way. It paints an illusory picture of a situation. It's not the way it is. And hearing Shastra gives you the reality of how it is. So you might think something is good, and it's not. By hearing Shastra, it'll be clear. It'll break that illusion. And if we don't hear Shastra, then we often start chasing dreams that are illusory and aren't going to bring us happiness. Now, maybe perhaps one of the most difficult forms of Maya is to paint a picture of illusion about something that we've already experienced as unhappiness. And then you might say, well, if Patanjali says that attachment will come from remembering happiness, how is it that I would be attached to doing something that caused misery? Well, Maya's very expert. She'll make you only remember the pleasure and forget the misery. Isn't that interesting? So sometimes we're contemplating doing something, enjoying something which has caused us pain, but we only remember the part that caused us pleasure. And Prabhupada says that Maya must give some pleasure, because if there's no pleasure, she can't allure us. So she'll make us remember the pleasure and forget the pain, and then we'll do it again, and then we'll experience the pain, and then we'll think, why was I so stupid to do that? Why did I forget? Well, that's the way Maya works. She has a potency that covers us. And also, Krishna says, apohanam cha, I will make you forget. So if you want to enjoy something badly enough, then Krishna may say, okay, I will make you forget that it caused you suffering. Isn't that interesting? It's like I sometimes like to say that our desires are dangerous in the sense that Krishna reciprocates with our desires and fulfilling our desires. So that makes our desires dangerous. If you know what I mean. Krishna Karshani said, don't you think hearing Shastra might not be enough in most cases, that we have experienced something for our own? Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. What did Prabhupada say? First class intelligence you learn by hearing, second class you learn by experiencing, but you also, there's no guarantee you actually learn by experience. Because like in this world, we all have the same experience. I know some people that have very difficult lives, and they have some spiritual knowledge, but they don't put it together. So they're suffering, and if they were a little more clear or evolved, or more intelligent, they would understand, okay, I'm suffering because I'm doing something, and perhaps I should stop doing this. But they don't. They keep trying in different ways. So experience is not necessarily going to teach us. Now, if you have knowledge, at least then you can reflect on the experience through your knowledge. In the case of many of us, we didn't really have knowledge, but perhaps from past lives, we had some inherent knowledge, and so when we suffered, it made us ask why we're suffering or ask spiritual questions. So, I would say in answer to your question, you're not guaranteed that anything is going to help you understand anything unless you want to understand or you're willing. Because if a person is too strongly attached to enjoying, nothing can help them. Prahlad Maharaj said that. Materna Krishna Parata Svatova. He said if someone's inclination to not be Krishna conscious is very strong, then nothing can actually help them. Instructions from others, their own contemplation. You could get the whole world to explain to them that they can't be happy, and it's not enough. Isn't that interesting? Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova. In Adanta Gober Vishitam Tamishram, so their uncontrolled senses will bring them, their uncontrolled senses will drag them to hell. They'll just go. They'll just keep doing it. You see people in the material world, and it's hard to understand how they can continue day in, day out with what they're doing and not sense that there's more. But not everyone gets it, and some people then will have to suffer more, and some people have to suffer for many lives before they get it, and some people might not get it for a long time, unfortunately. And some people are so intelligent that without suffering they get it, they see it. And so I would say that's what you say is true for many. They have to suffer and then they get it. But when we become devotees, then ideally we should get it by hearing. And we were talking today in class how one of the problems that we face is just we're not very smart. And to be a devotee, you have to have some pretty keen intelligence, because Maya will always try to bewilder you. And so, fortunately, Prabhupada's giving us intelligence, but if we don't study his books, then we'll tend to lack sufficient intelligence to understand Maya and get out of Maya. So I always felt that once becoming a devotee, if now the only way I understand something is through suffering, it means I'm really not very I'm not using my intelligence well. And so I think it's a good way to think. Let's use our intelligence better. So rather than having to suffer to learn something, and that may not even help us, we learn by understanding that these activities cause suffering, so I don't have to suffer. I know it will bring it. That kind of intelligence that's a devotee's intelligence, and that, fortunately, that intelligence is there in Prabhupada's books. Now, if we don't take it, that's unfortunate. So we were just reading about the stage. All right. So what is the hope for people with strong material desires? Looks like this cycle without to get out the varnashram, Daivi varnashram for it. Yeah, because Prabhupada saw that not only do you have people that don't have sufficient intelligence, but they're not even willing to chant Hare Krishna. So, in that case, Prabhupada said we need varnashram, and varnashram meets people where they're at, so to speak, and gradually purifies them. So, or they'll just need to live in the material world longer, and hopefully get some mercy of a Vaishnava, engage in devotional service. One of the things that we can do for people who aren't yet ready for Krishna consciousness is somehow engage them, giving them prasadam, engaging them in taking a book, giving a donation, seeing Krishna. I'm getting my knee tortured right now by my this devotee here. He's very good at massage, but he has a hard time not torturing me, because he knows that when something's sore, you have to go deep. So he goes very deep. So now he can't go deep because I'll scream. Normally I scream, ah! But if I scream, I can't talk. So, then, you can say for people who don't understand, somehow engage them. And, it's also that sometimes people can't understand, but later in life they'll understand. They have to go through more experiences. And sometimes that's true for many people. Some people join Krishna consciousness or get Krishna consciousness at 40, 50, 60. And if you talk to them, they'll say that they weren't ready yet for it. And I think that's true for all of us, that there was a point we came when we were ready. And I know in my own life, there was like a certain threshold of material life I needed before I could be a devotee. So that's there also. And the process, living in the material world is meant to bring people to Krishna, and Prabhupada said eventually everyone will come. It's just a question of how long. If there's not sufficient attraction or repulsion, you will not even come to this first stage. And so thoughts about it will not linger in your mind because there's little interest in what you contemplate. So even though you recognize something is beautiful, it doesn't necessarily attract you. So I've often talked about this idea of mental attraction, but it's not really attractive enough to cause you to contemplate. There's no emotion involved. Like there's so many things in the world which we can recognize that are attractive. It's just that we're not attracted to them. I mean, you ever seen a beautiful painting? But you can recognize it's beautiful, but or a song that's beautiful, it's well done. But you're not attracted to it. It doesn't work with your set of modes of nature. There's no interaction. So when there's lack of emotional connection with something or deep attraction, the contemplation, it's not going to really develop. And so I was making the point, you contemplate what you're attracted to, or you'll be forced to contemplate it if you're repulsed by it. That's the... This stage is more focused on thoughts than feelings. You see something you like or hate it, and then it grabs your attention enough, and you keep thinking about it. As you think it over, what you like or what you don't like about it intensifies. That doesn't make sense. Second half of the sentence makes sense. The next stage, it has to go to the stage where I would say the next stage is more focused on feelings. So then you keep thinking about it. Just like a boy meets a girl, girl meets a boy, and they're attracted, they keep thinking about it. That's, something's happening now. If you're thinking about another boy or girl because you're attracted, but your intelligence says they're not a good match, better stop thinking, because if you don't, you'll be in trouble. So let's see how this contemplation works. Let's say you want the latest iPhone. It started as contemplation. You see how nice it looks, and you learn about the features. You begin to imagine how nice it would be to have one. How it will make you, how it will feel good, how it will make you happy, how it will make your life better and easier, right? So now the iPhone becomes the Vishayan, the sense object. So Krishna says, Dayato Vishayan. You're meditating on the sense object, whatever it is. Sense objects refers to any object, person, or situation that we focus on. I'm editing this as I read it. I don't even know why I wrote this, who I wrote it for. That we focus on because they give us pleasure, or because they give us pain. Yes? Because they give us pain. Excuse me for the editing. Contemplating gaining pleasure from sense objects involves thinking about how to get them, and contemplating the imagined enjoyment and subsequent happiness these sense objects will bring when we have them. So, this is the contemplation stage. It starts to look good, or as I said, it's already something we did that was good. And so the mind is now getting focused. And it is at this stage that you have the greatest power to detach if you feel that what you're meditating on is not going to help you. At this stage, you have to run for it, because at this stage you have more intelligence and power to free yourself. If you continue contemplating and you get to the Sangat stage, the second stage, where attachment develops, it's much more difficult to give that up. We've seen often, and you've probably seen this many times, sometimes a boy and girl become attached to one another, and people who know them say that I don't think this is a good combination, I don't think it's going to work, I don't think you should do this, and they don't listen. And inevitably, at least in my experience, or most of the time, if not always, when people feel strongly that a relationship is not going to work, they're usually right, and it doesn't work. But when the sangat, the attachment, hits a certain point, then they may even know or recognize it's probably not such a good idea, but they're perceiving or they're getting pleasure from the association, or perceiving pleasure. And I would say in this case they're getting pleasure to such a degree that they can't give it up now, or it's extremely, they could give it up, but it's extremely difficult to give up because there's an attachment. So you see the difference between the contemplative stage and the attachment. Contemplative stage is, this looks nice. Attachment stage is more like, I want it. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this. This. I'm attached to this now. I have to have this. That's the danger. So, are we going to contemplate the objects of sense gratification? Well, as you advance in Krishna consciousness, the answer would be less. And you'll contemplate them less, and you'll contemplate them for shorter amounts of time, because your intelligence is stronger. So if your intelligence is stronger and you find yourself contemplating an object of sense gratification, what you will do is you'll just pull your mind away. You won't allow yourself to contemplate it. And if you're more evolved in Krishna consciousness, then what are you contemplating? You're contemplating Krishna consciousness, how to spread it. You're contemplating so many things in Krishna consciousness, and that's what's attracting your mind. That's the stage you want to come to. And when we're in that stage, it's quite difficult to be attracted to sense gratification. It doesn't have the impetus. There's not enough impetus. So, let's see what Karshini says. Said yesterday that we all need enough sense gratification. What do you mean by saying enough? How do we know? It's not too much and not too little. We may think we need a certain dose. I gave a whole class about this once, of sense gratification. That is not necessarily true, and we are lying ourselves. But you answer the question. That we really need it. Yeah, you answered the question. We're lying to ourselves. How much? Well, if we're to answer this question based on Shastra, which we should, and based on what Srila Prabhupada said, the answer is how much do you need? As little as possible. And then, of course, your question is, how do we know what's as little as possible? Prabhupada used to say that you have a body, so you need some sense gratification. You need some food, you need some sleeping, you need some sex, you need this and that. And how much is enough? Enough that you can think of Krishna. And how much is too much? Too much so it's harmful to your Krishna consciousness. And you have to be the judge of that. Is it like in anything we do in life, we have to ask ourselves, is this helpful for my bhakti or is this harmful for my bhakti? And if, like you say, you're lying to yourself, that it might be harmful to your bhakti, but you lie to yourself and say, no, I need this. You see, the whole point is that whatever sense gratification we get in Krishna consciousness is actually meant to release us from the desire for sense gratification. Like eating, why do we eat? Well, obviously, we need to eat to stay alive. But we also have to eat to satisfy our hunger. And so when that hunger is satisfied, and we've eaten enough, and then we eat beyond that, then it's not necessary. He's torturing me now. The problem is if there's, I guess, a weak organ, and then he hits it in my foot, then that's where it hurts. And he knows all the spots. I've never had anyone massage me that knows all the spots that are painful in me. He goes right for them. He feels them and he gets them. Yeah. So, you know when you're eating, you know when you've eaten enough, isn't it? Your body tells you, okay, that's enough. Do you eat more than enough? Sometimes yes. When I was young, I would say practically always I'd eat more than enough. And then what happens when you eat more than enough? You're tired, or you can't think straight. So, so with anything, what's enough? It's enough so that sense is pacified. Of course, one of the ways to pacify the sense is to detach from it, not give into it. And sometimes, in the name of pacifying a sense and giving into it, you'll agitate it. You have no idea how painful it is. Like, his massages are one of the most painful experiences of my life. If I wasn't giving class, he would be doing it harder, and I would be screaming and punching him. But his massages really helped me, like, immensely. But they're so painful. So all of you can pray that I tolerate this pain. Yeah. So you're going to have to determine how much sense gratification you need, but generally the answer is as little as possible. And when Prabhupada, Prabhupada does talk about that we need sense gratification, but he's not using it in the sense that we use it. You need to eat. Is eating sense gratification? Yeah, but when you eat simple and you're eating simply to maintain your body, I wouldn't call it like a very high degree of sense gratification. It's just satisfying the body's need for food and satisfying the stomach's urge so that now you can do your service. So a lot of times for eating for us is not a highly sensual activity. It's we eat food that's healthy. Of course it tastes good and like that, but it's not like high sense gratification for the tongue. It's simple and healthy. So you can apply that to all your senses. So that's how Prabhupada talks about sense gratification. All right, you have the need for sex, get married, have sex for children. So there's that. If you only have sex for children, is pretty limited, and it's not. It's the idea is you don't want to engage any sense in a way that you become attached to enjoying that sense over and over again. That's the chance that we always run into. So the Prabhupada saying, satisfy your senses, you have to eat, you have to sleep, mate, defend, these things, but you do it minimally so it doesn't become an addiction, so you actually become detached, or it doesn't become an obstacle to your bhakti. That's the point. And you could lie to yourself, but I don't think you can lie to yourself about the fact that something is really not helpful, because you'll experience it's not helpful. You may want to, instead of lie, just ignore. We could say another form of lying, just ignore the reality that this isn't helpful, because we want to enjoy it. But if something's not helpful, don't do it. That's a pretty simple principle, right? So when Prabhupada talks about sense gratification, he does. He's not like, okay, only watch 3 movies a month. No, that's not what he's talking about. Or only listen to 10 rock and roll songs a month. He's not talking about that. He's talking about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, not other kinds of general pleasures. I'm not talking about that. So we should be careful. Like Prabhupada said, when you're married, you now have a license for sense gratification. What he meant was, if you're not married, then no sex. And if you're married, here's your license, have sex for having children. He didn't mean, now that you're married, you have a license for a very luxurious sensual life. That's not what he meant. He's always, when he talks about sense gratification, he's generally talking about needs of the body that have to be fulfilled. So you have to sleep. How much you have to sleep? Just sleep enough. Don't sleep more. How much you have to eat? Eat enough. Don't eat more. How much sex? Minimize it. The idea is to give it up. Ultimately, we're trying to minimize eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And as far as possible. That's the idea. So if we're trying to minimize it as far as possible, then that's your standard of sense gratification. Okay, what's my minimum requirement so I don't go crazy and destroy everybody around me? Like I don't know if we were saying to you or saying in the class that there are people who, when they're hungry, they get very disturbed. And once they eat, they're fine. I don't know, it's a blood sugar thing or whatever. It's a physiological thing that when they don't get enough food in them, they get very, very irritated. So then they eat and everything's okay. So it's like that. It's like, we're satisfying the needs of the body enough that they don't cause attachment, but that we don't, so that we're satisfied enough that we can go on in devotional service. That's the idea. And then you'll see that as you advance, you'll become more detached. So, as we said yesterday in the last few classes, we should always know that sense gratification is always in opposition to Krishna consciousness, and it always has detrimental effects if we engage in it beyond what's required. Now, in answer to your question, what's required for some is a little more. In the lecture I gave about this, I don't know if you remember, I think we call it a 0 point. Like, what's your 0 point? Like, you want to get to a point where you stop thinking about the sense gratification and you can be just peaceful, right? So what's the point in which you'll be peaceful, right? So I have a friend. He has 18 guitars. So 18 guitars is his 0 point. Less than 18, he's going to be agitated. He'll always be thinking, I should buy this guitar or that guitar. Sounds funny, right? 18 is his 0 point. You might think, well, that's kind of a lot. Yeah, I think as he advances, he'll sell a few guitars. But at a certain point in his life, when he was living in Alachua, 18 was his 0 point. Isn't that funny? But once he had 18, he was okay. So, how many pairs of shoes is your 0 point? How many purses? How many sets of earrings? How many saris? How many this or that? All right. Once I have 40 saris, I'm okay. I'll stop thinking about saris. Maybe another lady when she has 8. Maybe another lady when she has 108. So you all have a different 0 point. The point is to stop thinking about shopping. So I need to buy enough, so I can stop thinking about shopping, right? Okay, but a higher ideal is to lower my 0 point over time, right? And that's called Vanaprast. So in Vanaprast, you lower your 0 point. Right? You've been married, you're older, you become more renounced, you get rid of things you don't need so much, you simplify, you lower your 0 point. And so the end of life is meant for a low 0 point. If at the end of, when you're young, your 0 point is going to be higher. That's to be expected. When you're older, if your 0 point is still high, then something's wrong. You need to lower it. Does that make sense? I forget the lecture, what we called it. I think we called it the 0 point, or some line which is like, okay, now, I'm pacified and everything's okay. Krishna Karshini said, if she gets hungry, she'll kill everybody. Yeah. My wife, oftentimes, she doesn't eat with us. And I say, why aren't you eating with us? She said, I already ate. I said, how come you didn't wait? She said, I got hungry, I couldn't wait. So her 0 point is, I'm hungry, I have to eat. That's it. So different bodies. Yeah. Okay. So, Rasaprada says, how can we justified as we follow the Shastras the fact that it's okay to have a big house, a good car, a well-paying job, etc., when we're supposed to be living a simple life and no attachment to material stuff? It's a very good question. I don't know if justify is the right word, because sometimes the only justification is that if I don't have it, I'll go crazy. Which I don't know if you could say shastrically that's a good justification. But it's like, this is what I need so I can be peaceful and do my service. And it's a reality that we have to deal with. Generally, though, you'll see, I could say in a counter-argument, antithesis, thesis, and so the thesis is that if you don't have certain material facility, then you'll be very disturbed or unsettled. So you get enough material facility so that you're satisfied. That's the thesis. But the antithesis is that we see generally your material facility is in proportion to your income. So you have more income, you have more material facility. That's generally how it works, right? So then it's harder to justify that point I just made, that I just have to have enough, because if you have more money, you'll have bigger this, bigger that. That's generally how it works. But that's more of an influence of our materialistic society on us. That if I get a new job or my business expands or I get more money, then I start thinking about bigger this, I can add on to my house, or I get a better car, bigger this, more that. I think that's more of an influence of our material conditioning. So one experience that we have living in Mayapur was the house we live in Mayapur is exactly half the size of the house we live in America. So then you say, how could you live in something and keep all your stuff? And well, we didn't have as much stuff, and we actually kind of maxed the house out. If we had any more stuff, there'd be no room for it, because it's not that big, it's half the size. So we managed, and my wife and I would say, this house is sufficient. If it were 1 inch smaller, it would be a little too small. Like my room in Mayapur is a little small. It's kind of cramped, but anyway, I can get all my clothes in there, all my books, there's room for everything. But if it was any smaller than that, it would be like a jail cell, I think. So it's sufficient, and I'm okay. And her room is smaller than our room in America, but it's sufficient, it's okay. So that's what we could afford, that's what was available. And so, so I would say that I personally have seen many nice devotees with very big homes, and maybe, in my estimation, more than what they needed, but maybe they felt that that was necessary. I think there's another aspect of it, is that you work very hard, and the result of your work is you want to pay yourself. So you buy nice things because you work hard. And what's the impetus to work hard if you don't? And you have to work hard. You have a job. They make you work hard. So that's a little bit of a materialistic mentality. You reward yourself for your hard work. But the story. There's a story, and I've often told it, and it's so interesting. Prabhupada was staying in a 2-bedroom house, and the devotees it was an apartment. The devotees were living in that apartment and let Prabhupada stay there, greeted Prabhupada in the apartment, and they were introduced to Prabhupada. These are the devotees who live here. This is their apartment. You're staying here. And it was 2 bedrooms, and Prabhupada asked them how many families are living here. He wasn't joking. He was dead serious. 2-bedroom apartment, how many families are living here? So I think Prabhupada's had a different standard than we have. But I think the best answer to this question is don't worry about others. Worry about yourself. I've also thought of the same question that you have, and the general answer I think devotees would give is that the house is comfortable and I'm peaceful and I have the money and Hare Krishna, I'm serving Krishna, and I have a limit. I'm not going to build 5 more stories on my house just to have a big house because I have the money, but so nice, sufficient, more than sufficient. And that's really a question every devotee has to ask. I know some very advanced devotees, and renounced also with amazingly beautiful homes. So it doesn't externally always make sense, does it? It's a difficult question to answer because I'm not those devotees. But it's okay. Well, you have to see how they're advancing in Krishna consciousness. Some of these devotees have these beautiful homes, and they're very Krishna conscious. I know devotees have beautiful homes, and I was wondering actually why their home is so big. And then I came to know that they bought their home at a time when the economy was really bad, and the big home in this neighborhood cost less than the smaller home in another neighborhood. So they thought, well, if I'm going to spend X amount of money, why not get the bigger home, and there's just more facility for service. So they used the home for service. And they used the home for service, and so you never know why. Maybe their parents bought them the house, or it's their parents' house. They're living in a house, it's their parents' house. You don't know, or the rent's low, or whatever. Or they bought it 20 years ago and it wasn't expensive. They built a big house thinking, oh, he hit a spot. Thinking maybe they're going to have a big family, and then they didn't. Who knows the reason? I don't know. But we do generally see that when devotees move to the Dham or live in the Dham, they live more simply. Their homes tend to be smaller because when you're in the Dham, you're more in a renounced mood. Here. Oh, he wants my foot because he knows. The problem with him is he knows too much. He knows when he hits the pain point, that needs to be massaged. It's so painful. It feels like somebody is sticking a knife in my foot. Ah! And going,
Sorry.
And he laughs when I scream. Guru Maharaj, naturally when we are older we are more austere, meaning the 0 point is lower. When you are young, 0 point is higher. So is it not a bit contradiction? Giving initiation? It's a good question, and I asked this to initiate young people have lots of material desire to fulfill. Well, expecting them to follow the commitments. The general answer, you could say, yeah, you're right, don't give them initiation until they're older. The interesting thing is Prabhupada gave initiation to younger people. So I discussed this with other gurus. I discussed this long before I was a guru, and I was saying, why you give initiation? I said, well, what is it better that they're initiated even though they're not following, or better, they didn't get initiation. They said the connection with their guru strengthens, at least for many of them after initiation, and it's that connection that can help them to better follow their commitments. So that's an interesting perspective. And I'll give you my personal experience in the seat of the guru as opposed to the seat of the disciple. If there's affection, if I see a disciple struggling, but they have affection, and they have, they have affection for me, they want to please me, serve me, it's much easier for them to rectify their weaknesses because they want to do it to please their guru, and we have such a good relationship that they don't want to let me down. Even though they're weak, they may let me down sometimes. But they'll say, I'm sorry, I slipped, but my intention is that I want to follow and I want to please you. And that's why they do it. And I discussed this with other gurus, and they've said the same thing, that the connection is, the deeper the connection of the disciple for their guru is, the more their affection is there, the more impetus they have to follow. And so the case you're describing can be of someone who's just, they're in a stage of life where they're struggling with something. And maybe they weren't struggling with it when they were initiated, they're struggling later. But if the connection to their guru is strong, that's going to pull them through in the long run. So that's an interesting angle. Of course, someone may decide I'm not ready to be initiated, and I would never, and I don't think any of us should, push them. At least generally we wouldn't. Because that commitment has to come from them. But I'm not so worried about the disciple falling, as long as they're repentant and we have a good, strong connection. I'm more worried about disciples falling who don't have a good connection. Because they'll just fall and they won't tell me, and they'll just kind of disappear, being embarrassed, or the affection is not strong enough for them to want to rectify it. But if the affection is strong, because you see, when you make a vow, you're making a vow to a person. It's not just an impersonal vow. You're not vowing to the universe to do something. You're vowing to your spiritual master. And so if the connection to the guru is strong, then the disciple knows, this is not following my vows is affecting my relationship with my spiritual master, and that relationship is important. So, following the vow is nourishing the relationship. So I've seen that in many devotees who have struggled, and they'll say, but I promised to follow this, and I fell, and please forgive me, and I'm going to follow it. And I think it's also good that they're honest enough to admit, rather than just disappear when they can't follow it. I have devotees send me reports every month, and sometimes the devotee who's been sending every month doesn't send it. You know what that means? It's a bad report, so they don't want to send it because it's bad. To which I always reply, the time to send it is not when it's good, is when it's bad, so that I can help you. So, it's not easy being a disciple. Not easy being a guru, not easy being a disciple. Yeah, okay. Is that all right? There are devotees who are very rich and have love of God, and very poor and don't. She didn't say that, I said. So I guess the private thing of every person, should we be police and look who's having something? No, we shouldn't be. I think Rasa Prada's question was kind of, no, what you say is true. I think Rasa Prada's question is, it's more about, Shastra says we should be renounced. You may even see somebody who's got a lot of opulence and they're very Krishna conscious. But then you'll wonder, well, if they're so Krishna conscious, why do they have so many things? Because, how do they in their mind justify it? It may not have been a negative question. It may have not been meant to be critical, but just how do we understand it? If the sign of advancement is renunciation, and I see this devotee is very renounced, why is it that they have such a big home? Well, one of the things that I've come to realize is you can look at it like eating. Like, have you ever seen a very Krishna conscious devotee eat a lot? I have. Or a very Krishna conscious devotee eat very opulently and very rich. And maybe someone who's not so Krishna conscious, they eat more simply. I think there's also the nature of the individual. And so sometimes they don't always equate. So you could apply that to money and wealth also, that some devotees are very Krishna conscious, but they just need more facility. It's like their inherent nature. I'll tell you a story. I was once taking prasadam at Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and this was in Houston. Gunagrai Maharaj was there, and Hanumat Prasheka Swami was there. And Hanumat Prasheka Swami was very renounced. And I think it was almost like it seemed in those days as all his possessions fit in a little bag he could carry on his shoulder. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but that was kind of the impression that I had of him. It was very renounced. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj appreciated that. And after we took prasadam, Hanumat Prasheka Swami left to go back to his room, and Maharaj said that I'd love to be like him, but I'm not. It's not my nature. Isn't that interesting? So Tamal Krishna Maharaj's nature was to have more opulence and material comfort. But he did all kinds of austerity for Prabhupada. He did so much service, but his nature was not to live like that simple sannyasi. To do that, sometimes he would do austerity, but generally, like if you visited the temples he was in charge of, he always had very nice rooms, and wherever he went. And but it's interesting because I've also seen devotees with very nice material facility, beautiful rooms and this and that. They hardly eat and they hardly sleep. So you see what I'm saying? That everybody's different. So this one devotee who I was referring to had this beautiful house. I was actually extremely Krishna conscious. But he had this other side, which was just money was just important for him, and material opulence was important. So it's not always a sign that someone's less Krishna conscious. It's more of a sign of nature. Or like you could ask the same question, if so-and-so is so Krishna conscious, why did they get married? And sometimes people would ask me that because they'd see me and they'd say, you seem very Krishna conscious. I can't understand why you got married. And I think the answer is the same. It's just there's a certain nature. And so that certain nature needs to be fulfilled. But there's other sides of us that are renounced. And so sometimes it's not so consistent, so to speak, at least in younger days. So that what's inconsistent is that you see a person's very renounced in one area, but it seems in another area they're extravagant or they're engaging their senses because it's their nature. So, like you're saying, very Krishna conscious devotees have very big homes. It just might be their nature. That opulence and money are just kind of ingrained in their karmic psyche. That it's just, if they don't have it, they're not comfortable. They need to have such things. And it somehow or other doesn't really impede their Krishna consciousness. It's just, for them, their 0 point is a 5,000 square foot house. Someone else's 0 point is a 1,000 square foot house. So that's my observation. And I think the story of Tamal Krishna Maharaj is a good example. And he said, I would like to be like Maharaj, but I'm not. He just admitted, I'm not like that. But I would love to be that way. I really appreciate it. And I think sometimes you have that same experience where you see somebody And you're not like them, but you wish you were. And you just realize, I'm not like that. It's not my nature. I can't be that way. And I, when I was younger, I was very attracted to sannyasis and sannyas life. I had part of me was like very sannyasi-like. But then there's another part of me that I saw that there's something missing. So if I took sannyas, it wouldn't be natural, it wouldn't be easy. And it's not like I wanted to enjoy grihastha life, or I would think about women and how to enjoy them. It wasn't like that. It was like somebody needs to eat a certain kind of food. It was like that. And sometimes I had difficult times figuring out. I said, why is it that I have this desire? Because a lot of times when I look at grihastha life, I don't seem to be attracted to many of the aspects of it. But I realized there was enough of it in me, or enough of a need in me, that was safer or better, but it never really became an impediment to my devotional service. It never got in the way, and actually, statistically speaking, it seems that it helped, because most sannyasis in my generation didn't make it. So if I would have taken sannyas in my late 20s, who knows if I would have made it or not. But having not taken sannyas, being married, there were no big bumps in the road. So something like that. At least that's my experience. And I would often look at myself and think, there seems to be contradictions within me, like renunciation and desire to be married. They seem to be opposite, and in a sense they are. And so for someone else it could be wealth and renunciation. They live in a beautiful home and they're up every morning at 4 o'clock. I've seen that with devotees. They have Mangal Arti 4:30 every day. They don't live near a temple, and they have this beautiful home, but they're living austerely in the home. So I think there's many, past samskars or many things. And so we shouldn't necessarily judge a devotee because we see some desire for what seems to be material enjoyment or opulence. It may be just like, I think for many devotees, they're not even conscious of it, it's just ingrained in them. It's just how they are. 18 guitars for this devotee, that's like, that's 18, that's not a lot. I think he asked for a personal matter. For example, I have a car that is 5 years old and starts having problems, and I wonder if I should buy a new car. And the type of car, because it may seem material. Okay, we can answer it from that question. It may seem materialistic. Where's the fine line between satisfying your needs and satisfying your desires? Or at least, that's how I understand. Yeah, okay, maybe that is what he's asking. Yeah. Well, he's also saying, he's commenting. It wasn't a negative question, it was more comparing what Shastra says and the way of living for some and trying to find out. Oh yeah. Okay, so we'll ask, and I think Rasaprada, did I answer that question? Did I answer how to understand what Shastra says? And then we'll go back to Linda's question. How do you know what you need? How do you know what's too much? That's a very good question. And I don't know if there's one answer. Okay, let's use the car example. If you're driving a lot, your occupation depends on it, get a new car. If that's not the case, and it's more economical and if money saving and efficient to keep your car, that would be a wise choice to keep it. And it's more ecologically beneficial because every time we buy new cars, they have to make more cars. So, a lot of the answer to your question could be practical. What's practical in that situation? Another answer to your question is, It's not Linda, it's Linda. Okay, Linda. Another answer to your question is, you have to answer that question. It's a good question. How much is need? How much is need and how much is greed? That's something that sometimes only you can answer. And it goes back to the other answer I gave. Can you afford a new car? So you say, yeah, I can afford a new car. Okay. So, yes, no problem, I'll get a new car. This other one's a problem, and it's wasting my time, and it's always in and out of the shop. So even though, from an economic perspective, probably better I fix the car, from a practical perspective, it's wasting my time, and I have the money for a new car, so why not do it? So there's so many considerations. Then, if you want to take it from a very philosophical consideration, then, yeah, from an absolute philosophical consideration, is there one? Because is there really one absolute philosophical consideration? One time, when Prabhupada was speaking and they were having some problem with the microphone, and then he thought perhaps the problem was that it's not a good microphone. And he said, there's a Bengali saying, when you buy something, buy the best. So, I use my car in Krishna service, so I should have a good car. I'm making my house a temple. I'm inviting devotees over to my home. I should have a nice home. I have a business. I should have a sufficient home because I run my home out of my business. There's so many considerations. You see, the main consideration, I would say, is that the devotee's predominant thought is, how can I please Krishna? What does Krishna want me to do this? Is this pleasing? Is this the right thing? That's the thought. And then based on that, you make decisions. Is this really what Krishna wants? Now, I have to admit, I've seen some very renounced devotees with some very beautiful cars. Very renounced sannyasis who ask disciples to buy certain cars for them. So, I don't think there's one answer. And I don't, like you're saying, I don't think we can judge people based on these decisions they make. And I think there's another factor we definitely have to consider in the equation, and this is how I think, that we're all influenced by our culture and our society. When I'm in India, practically everybody has very small cars, because cars are expensive based on the income level of people, and the price of petrol or gas is expensive. In America, people tend to have bigger cars. The same income bracket, more or less, they tend to have bigger cars. The cars are less expensive, the petrol is less expensive. It's a different culture. So sometimes our lifestyle decisions are influenced by these factors, cultural factors, and so it's my personal opinion. And I don't know if it's my personal opinion, but it's something that I ask myself. I sometimes ask myself, when I see something going on, I ask myself, if Srila Prabhupada were still alive, would this be going on? Maybe you've asked yourself that question. Or think maybe as disciples of Prabhupada, we tend to ask this question more. And I ask myself this question a lot. I see something and I think, I don't know if this is really what we should be doing. And I wonder if Prabhupada were still alive, if we would be doing this. And so, that's also a question you can ask yourself when you're wondering, should I buy this new car, should I do this? Ask yourself, if Prabhupada were here and, I'd have to explain to him my decision, would he say, okay, that's good? Or would he say, that's extravagant? And I don't know of any personal precedent other than that story of how many families are living in this house, where Prabhupada told a devotee, your car is too big or it's too nice, or your house is too big or too nice. But he did say on one occasion when devotees were living simply, he was praising them for that. He liked that. My grihastas live simply. So if we can live simply, then definitely, we could definitely say that Prabhupada's happy with that. But I've never heard Prabhupada condemn anyone because their house was too big or their car was too big. Yeah. This is, it's also a difficult question to answer because if I answer it in a specific way, then you might think, if I say, no, this is not what Prabhupada wanted, and we should live with the bare minimum, and all that extra money we should just buy books and distribute. If I said that, the problem would be that you could interpret that I'm criticizing all the devotees that don't do that, and that's not my intention. And as I said, I know some very Krishna conscious devotees with some very nice material facilities in their lives. So it's hard to answer it in a specific way because that could be taken that I'm condemning or criticizing devotees who don't live that way. And we do see that, like with the example Tamal Krishna Maharaj, we do see that he's very Krishna conscious, but by nature he needed certain facilities. And he told me that. Once he said, I need these facilities so that I can do the austerities of management. Those were his words. So it's interesting, I need the comforts so that I can do the austerity. No, it's a good question. I think it's a good question. I think the question you asked is on the mind of lots of devotees. And I think it's important to answer it, because it is on the mind naturally. If we see a devotee maybe doing something that we think a devotee shouldn't be doing, we question it. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, and this is such a nice point, he said, he brought me into his room, and his room was very beautiful furniture, rugs, nice bedspread, nice bed. And you'd think of a sannyasi's room as quite simple, sleeping on the floor, one little shelf. And then he said, I didn't say anything. I knew him, and I knew that he was completely dedicated to Prabhupada. So I wasn't even thinking anything, but he said to me, just thinking that maybe I was thinking, or people may be thinking, why such a nice room? Because he's a very renounced person, so it almost seems strange that a renounced person would live that way. And he said to me, my austerity is management, and that's what he does. And he has huge responsibilities. And he said, I need this so I can do my austerities. So I thought that's a nice answer, So like some of these devotees with these big houses are doing all kinds of programs, and as I said, Mangal Artik every day, and they're doing lots of preaching. And, if you asked them why, they'd probably say the same thing. They'd say, I need this so I can do the other austerities. And I've come to that realization myself as well. Like, it used to be when I would travel, whatever facility I would get, I would just take. But, sometimes I don't have facility, and there's no desk, there's no trash, there's no dustbin, there's no place to put my computer, there's no internet, there's like nothing. And I have to say, is there a desk? Do you have a desk? Do you have a chair? Is there any internet here? Like I sometimes will have to spend the whole day on my computer, and it's just awkward to like sit on a bed and put it on my lap, Sometimes it just destroys my back when I do that. So, obviously we need certain facility. And then, I'm many days just going out preaching all day, going from this place to that place, staying up, exhausted. I was exhausted. I was sleeping before I gave you class. I would have just slept all night if there was no class. So, so when we're in those situations, it's like we need certain things to be able to do those other austerities, service. So that's the mood, right? If I have these facilities, I can do better service. That's how we think, right? And so then you judge it that way. There's a lot of the questions you're asking, you have to answer yourself. Yes. Radhapriya is praising me, so I'm not going to read it. I can't read my own praises. But she's saying she's just appreciating what she's been given, so she wants to follow in appreciation. I'm going through. Richa is saying, how do we balance our passion in doing something? Like if we do business, less profit makes us content. Whoops. And something. If we do business, less profit makes us content. But it's an interesting question. I'm just trying to. If we do business, less profit makes us content. All we look for is just maintenance. So we become content, makes our passion to grow, to expand, die eventually. But for being a better businessman, we have to be expanding business, being passionate. But something, it makes us flow in it. So how do we connect to passion and yet balance our materialistic and Krishna conscious life? What the teachings of Krishna consciousness are, work enough to make what you need. And if you're running your own business, I just read about this business. What business was? I think it's a business of someone who makes like health bars or something. And they have about 80 employees. They could have 8,000 and they could go like global and this and that. But the person who owned the business said that he wants to maintain a standard as a family business. He doesn't want to grow it huge. It's not his idea. So I like that. And I think that was Prabhupada's idea also. That we don't, because let's say you can grow the business and you have so many ideas, but then it's going to infringe on your sadhana. There's a story, I think this story answers your question, that the devotees started a business. Actually, Prabhupada gave them the idea to start a business, and your business would be an incense business. So he gave them the idea how to do it. I think he even gave them the idea how to make the incense. You skipped my question. Whose question did I skip? Krishna Karshani, your question? I'll go back. So they started this incense business, and it was working really well. It was very successful. Nobody was making incense in America. So at that time they had a bit of a monopoly, and lots of devotees were working for the business. So it was going well. And then they branched into essential oils, and then soaps, scented products. But it was already going well just with the incense. And when they told Prabhupada that we're expanding, make more money, he was upset. He said, it was sufficient the way it was. So why are you complicating it? Isn't that interesting? So naturally the Vaishya mentality is keep expanding, keep investing, it's going well, so take your investment, expand it into other product lines, and then you can double, triple, quadruple your money. But Prabhupada's point was, well, you're getting sufficient money and everything's fine, so why expand and complicate it? So in answer to your question, the problem is that if you're a business person and you've been trained, or you're just being influenced by the competition and the business climate, there's that tendency to keep expanding, work harder, make it better, but that doesn't always go so well with sadhana. And so if my business is sufficient and it's going well and I'm making enough, then why complicate it, right? But I would also say, if you have the nature of a Vaishya, that's going to be your nature, to want to make it bigger and make more money. And that's going to be hard to control. So what Prabhupada told these devotees at the incense company is that your nature, because they were all Vaishyas running the company, said your nature is that you'll just work so hard, you'll compromise your sadhana. So that's the problem in giving into your nature and what you're doing. Or let's say it's not business, let's say it's something else. It could be writing or art or anything. And you like doing it, it's your nature. But the potential problem is that you'll overdo it. And you'll do it, you like doing it so much that you'll reduce your sadhana in order to do it. Does that make sense? I hope that answers your question. And and the point is, if at heart you're a Vaishya, then you won't be able to. And I say, keep it simple. You won't be able to. It's not the way a Vaishya thinks. Or I don't want to say you won't be able to, but it'll be a challenge for you if you're a Vaishya to keep it simple, because Vaishyas, their natures. They're always thinking about making money. Ooh, he's pulling my leg exactly the way I pulled it when I heard it. And I wonder if it's getting worse right now. And I can't tell him because he doesn't speak English. Release me. Okay, I'm going to go see if I missed a question. Did I miss a question? Whose question did I miss? Whose question did I miss? I don't know. I have to ask the question again. I don't see it. If I missed your question, please ask it again. No. Rasa Prada, I like your question. I think it was good. Gora Prabhu, my godbrother, Ki Jai. Obeisances. If Srila Prabhupada were here, would we have agreed to disinvite our god sister Jadharani from speaking at the Prabhupada festival? Jadharani was invited to speak, and then because she left ISKCON and promoted someone outside of ISKCON, some people, some of the leaders asked her not to come. So he's asking, what would Prabhupada do? My question is, what is the difference between loyalty to ISKCON and sectarianism? Wow, that's a whole different topic. Didn't Prabhupada say the war is over and wanted the Gaudiya Sanghas to do Harinam together? Oh, that's exactly how I ruined my knee. I wonder how my knee's going to be tomorrow morning. Oh, doctor torture chamber. Anyway, I answer that question, I'm going to get in trouble. So we'll have to talk about it privately. Because obviously there devotees on both sides of the issue. One of those questions, however you answer it, you're like 50% of the people will like it and 50% won't. So that's such a difficult question. Let's talk about it personally. I was thinking about it lately, actually. I like Linda. She's saying I need to analyze if I really need the car, or I just, cars are prestige. Because if you have an old car, it's like no prestige. People look down upon you, right? In poor countries, average cars are 20 to 25 years before they get rid of them. They maintain them because they can't afford to buy new cars. It's interesting. It's interesting to see how poor people live as opposed to rich people. They maintain things, they reuse them, they hand them down in the family. So many things like that. And rich people, I was 5 years old, get rid of it. Yeah. I just got rid of my van last year. It finally went to the grave. It was 1997. Yeah, it was 20 years old. So, yeah. Okay, when your car's 20 years old, then you can sell it. But if you drive to work in a 20-year-old car, it'll make you very humble. No one will appreciate you, right? But it's good for the environment. Sounds painful, yeah. You want to know what pain is? Come over here and get massaged by this devotee. It's not massage. It's torture. Prabhupada prepared himself all his life to do what he did. Spiritual, emotional, material, mental. Yeah, you could say that. He did prepare himself. Even in another sense, yeah. I mean, he said that. I had to prepare myself. It was the right time to come. Prabhupada said he had to prepare himself, but we also see that 1965 was the perfect time to come. Before that, it would have been hard. Harder, more difficult. Painful, yeah. All the girls are crying now, seeing me suffer. It's more about now I have to change parts of the car and they are expensive, and now I have a stable job so I can afford to buy a new one. Yeah. I don't think it's a materialistic reason. Prabhupada appreciated things that work well. He wasn't against buying new things, new cars. He was very happy. Sometimes they were buying Mercedes vans and they were driving them to India for traveling Sankirtan. That was Prabhupada appreciated, yeah. We should have good things for Krishna. They should work, take care of them. So that's, nothing's a problem. The problem is the mentality. So if the mentality's right, then nothing's a problem. Like Sudama Vipra, Krishna gave him this huge palace. It was okay. He used it. So no problem for him. So, yeah, you use everything well, no problem. So, Richard says, I completely agree. Having a business nature makes it difficult. But it's like when we started doing business, I was very passionate. I wanted to just grow. But when we grow in our sadhana, sadhana also, we lose that passion. Yeah, that's true. So my question was, how do we keep both going? Is it correct to aspire, to earn, to serve devotees? Yeah. So let's say you have the nature of a Vaishya. There's no problem with making money. The only problem is compromising devotional principles. Yeah, every project will be happy if you make a lot of money and you donate to them. There's no question. Anyone you donate to will be very happy that you're donating to them. And they'll be very happy that you have a successful business, and they'll be very happy that you're working hard. But they won't be happy if you're compromising your Krishna consciousness. And you're working 15 hours a day, you come home exhausted, all you can do is take a little prasadam and go to sleep, and you only sleep 6 hours, and then you get up and chant one round and go to work. So what's the point? Okay, it's nice you're supporting all these projects, but you have to support yourself also. So the easy answer to the question is the balance is in that you keep your spiritual life together. You don't minimize your spiritual life. You don't sacrifice your spiritual life. And if you have a Vaishya nature and you're doing a business, we can apply that, to, as I said, to anything that we're doing where we have the nature to do it. You always have to. What I found personally is if you maintain your sadhana, then you don't have to worry. If you maintain good sadhana every day, you rise at a certain time, you chant, you read, you do that every day, then whatever you do the rest of the day, it's not going to have much of a negative effect on you because you're inoculated, you're strong, and that you're smart enough to cut your day at a certain time so that you can get back home early enough to get up early enough to have your sadhana. Then you're fine. It's when you compromise that in the name of expanding the businesses and that, then it's a trap. Richa, that company, what is it? It's that chicken company, Chick-fil-A. It's a Christian company. And Chick-fil-A is in malls everywhere. And the biggest days in malls are Saturday and Sunday. And Sunday's, of course, a big day. Families go out and eat. And Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday because they believe that Christians should not work on Sunday. And it's a very successful business. But they're closed on Sunday because that's their principle. Did you know that? So you go in the mall, as far as I know, at least this is the way it used to be, all the restaurants are open and they're closed. There's another company in New York, it's called B&H Photo. So if you're in America or you're visiting America and you need to buy photo equipment or musical equipment, microphones, recording equipment like that, B&H it's one of the best places to buy. And it's run by, I believe, Hasidic Jews. It's run by Jews. So you go in there and see many of the Jewish people with their yarmulkes and beards. They're working there. And stores like that in America normally would stay open until 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. And they would be closed. They wouldn't be closed. They'd be open 7 days a week. But because this is run by Jews, they close their store at 6 o'clock, and I don't know if Saturday it's closed all day or what. I don't know how it works, I think. So they maintain their spiritual principle. And it's a very successful company. I was in their store. I was once buying something in their store when I was in New York. And I got in there about 5:30, and then I finally found it. And at 6 o'clock they said the store is closing. There were 100 people shopping in the store, and they kicked them all out. And there probably would have been hundreds of people shopping all night. They closed at 6 o'clock. For a store to close at 6 o'clock in New York, wow, that's weird. And that's their principle. So, I think those are good examples of successful companies that maintained their religious principles and did well, and they're still doing well. That's one of the, B&H Photo is one of the biggest retailers of cameras, video equipment, musical equipment. So, you like that answer? I think that's a good answer. What do you think, Richa? Is that a good answer? We want to, yeah. So, Sringarad's saying, yeah, you definitely serve Krishna with your business. If I ever meet somebody who is good at making money, I always tell them that you combine the Vaishyas and the Brahmins, because the Brahmins are the teachers, and most of the Brahmins, they're not interested in money, they're not good at making money, but they need money so they can spread their teaching. So if you have someone who's good at business, who can who can give money to the Brahmins, then the Brahmins can publish their books. The Brahmins can develop websites, put things online, like that. They can, the Vaishyas can help the Brahmins expand their teachings so more people hear them. So that's fantastic. Because usually the Brahmins they're not that interested in money, or they're not that money minded, and if they were, they could distribute their knowledge better. Maybe if they were Vaishyas, they'd have #1 sellers because they would know how to market themselves and have a marketing budget and so you get some Vaishyas connecting with the Brahmins. It's a great combination. So certainly, yeah. We never really discourage devotees from doing any service. Whoa! Yeah, these, normally, normally this class is in the morning in America, but it's evening now in China. So anyway, it worked out. After a few years of chanting, I suddenly stopped chanting. This kept me bothering, and I struggled for a year to bring myself back on track. I'm still afraid I may lose my routine. Let me see. My routine again. Trying to identify the reason. Someone said you lose a routine when you do it. Yeah. You gain a routine, you lose it. Yeah. When you do it forcefully. Oh, okay. Now I'm unable to understand if my sadhana is something I do forcefully. Actually, sadhana means practice. And sometimes practice means you don't like doing it. So the idea is that at you have to be a little forceful before you learn to like it. That's the point. So if I were in your shoes and you kind of got distracted, yeah, I would have forced myself. So it may be true that you give up something because you have to force yourself, but the problem is that we may not be attracted to sadhana so much, but we have to do it. And so at a certain stage there is going to be force. That's just we have to accept that reality. And someone wants to know who's Jesus Christ. Prabhupada said he is our guru. Why our sadhana always goes down and up? Some days it's so amazing we can easily get up in the morning, we read here, do everything. The moment we are happy, the next day it goes down. Our rounds go down. Rounds go down, we complete them by the night. Why is it so difficult? What should be our aspiration? What time should we chant? How much should we read or hear? I was once going to get a computer and to use for recording, because they were just coming out with software, and so you could do all your audio recording on a computer. You didn't need external hardware anymore. And so when I'm in the music store, I would say, well, how big a hard drive do I need? How fast a processor do I need? And everyone I ever answered that question gave the same answer. Get as big a hard drive as you can afford. Get as fast as a computer as you can afford. And so that's the answer, part of the answer to your question. When you say, what should be our aspiration? What time should we chant? Get up as early as you can. How much should we read? Read as much as you can. If you could read 2 hours a day, if you can get up at 4 o'clock, that'll be fantastic. The answer to your question about the ups and downs, as Krishna answered it in the 2nd chapter, is that when you feel like going down, don't go. Just keep to the routine no matter how you feel. That's the trick. So yeah, some days you're going to feel like it, some days you won't, because the bhakti's not yet mature. So if you know that's to be expected, then when you don't feel like it, then it's okay. You just do it, because you know that the torture is over now. Hare Krishna. Thank you. You want to see the torture guy? Here, say hello. See? He's my...
Hare Krishna.
There he is. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see tomorrow morning if my knee is better or it's worse. Right now it feels like might be better. Thank you. Yeah. Feels like it's working. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be better. Yeah. So the idea in the stage of sadhana is that sometimes you get more mercy, and sometimes the modes of nature influence us more. And we're living in a Western society. The whole world's West. There's like no Eastern anywhere. China, you think it's East. It's not Eastern at all. It's like metropolis, skyscrapers, So we're all living in Western society. So we're all very influenced. So that has an influence on our sadhana. We live in a passionate, ignorant world. So that's the key. Is like if you don't feel like it, the key is do it. Keep steady, and someday you'll feel like it. That's how it works. And that really struck my heart. Not compromising with sadhana will always keep the whole day out of problem. Yeah, that was really strong to know. I would definitely try to follow. Yeah, that's Prabhupada's number one priority. Yeah, that was Prabhupada's instructions to the business people. Jesus Christ is a Shaktivesh avatar. He is a Jiva soul, a living being who is empowered by Krishna, who has the Shakti of Krishna within him. So in that sense he's God, because he has God's Shakti, but he's not God because he's a soul, like we are, but carrying God's Shakti. Sringavad says, my nature is Brahman, but I experience myself in business, but I love to be Brahman. What a challenge, yeah. You're probably both. Anyway, use both. You can make a lot of money to spread Krishna consciousness. What kind of massage is that? Massage is not a good word for this. He knows where all the pain's related, and so he just goes down and he feels the spots, and he knows you have to massage in those spots to release it, which is true. And he just goes very deep, like it's not relaxing massage. It's really, but he did it last time I was here, and every massage I felt 2 to 3 years younger in terms of the stiffness of my body. It was amazing. So the pain was worth it, but it was hard. Reflexology. Well, any people who have mystic power, they can send their Shakti to me. Okay, so I guess we answered everyone's questions. And, the answer, in the sense, you could say the answer to everybody's question is do what pleases Krishna, do what pleases Guru, and do what's best for your spiritual life. That's always the criterion of making a decision. What is going to be the best for Krishna's service, what will be pleasing to Guru and Krishna, and what will be most helpful for my spiritual life. And that's basically the criterion that Prabhupada gave us if we're going to make a decision about anything. And like Krishna Karshani was saying, sometimes we lie to ourselves, so we're not honest about where we're at, and that makes it difficult. We might say, no, what I'm doing is fine, because we're trying to, in somehow or other, rationalize an activity that's not fine. And so, it takes some honesty, and that's not always easy. But it's not easy because we're attached to doing certain things, or we're attached to enjoying certain things. And if we admit that what we're attached to is not good, we have to detach from it. And we may not want to detach from it, and because we don't want to detach from it, we don't want to admit that it's bad. So sometimes it's hard to admit something's bad, knowing that if I admit it, then I'll feel guilty if I don't give it up, and I don't want to give it up. You know what I mean? I'm sure you know what I mean, but it's subtle. It's hard to admit to ourselves that I'm doing something wrong and I should give it up if it's the very thing that I'm attached to that I don't want to give up. Yeah. So extricating, I think one message we can take from this discussion is extricating ourselves from the material world. It's not easy because you extricate yourself from one thing, but it doesn't mean that there are not other things to extricate yourself from. Like the saying is that a chain is only as weak as its weakest link. So you may be strong in so many areas. You've pulled yourself away from so many attachments, but that one weak link can destroy you. And whatever that weak link is, we need to be aware of it, very aware of it, because let's say you're healthy, but if one problem in your body which could destroy you, you have to obviously be very concerned about it, isn't it? You have a cancer somewhere, but otherwise you're totally healthy, and that cancer can destroy you. So that's where self-honesty is powerful, to be honest with ourselves that, no, this is where I'm weak, and this is where I need to be careful. Right? And so, like Rich is saying, well, she likes doing business and she can work very hard. So she might think, well, maybe that's my weakness. And so as long as, if I don't know if that is, but if, let's say, for example, that is your weakness, to admit it, to be aware of it, to work on it, then you should be okay. Because knowing it's your weakness, you'll be careful to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, right? So it's good for all of us to be aware of our weaknesses and to be aware of how those weaknesses can harm us. Some people, like, anger is a weakness. They get angry easily. Or impatience is a weakness, or something, right? And so once you know it and you focus on working on it, then you can get over it. And if you don't admit it, or you think you can't work on it, it's too strong, and then you don't work on it, then that's a problem. Okay, so we went a long time, almost 2 hours. And we were supposed to have class tomorrow, but we can't because at the time I'm supposed to give it, which is 8:15 in Australia, we're doing a program for some business people to teach them how to run a business. I mean, how to get along, how to cooperate, which is amazingly difficult, although businesses have one advantage over us in terms of cooperation. They can hire and fire. We don't hire and we don't fire. We just take what we can get. So sometimes we have to put people together that have a hard time working together, whereas a company can just hire people. But these people will work well together, let's hire them. So we're even more challenged than they are, although we have, of course, Krishna consciousness to help us, but still it's a challenge. Okay, so what we were thinking is that instead of class tomorrow, 8:15 in Australia, we could do it the day after. Let's see. We'll keep you posted. I'm just checking with Sundari Radha, and then we'll get a confirmation, and then we'll let you know, because Tuesday night I'm free, but tomorrow night I'm not. Okay? We had nice programs today, and Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.